Anderson. He may have been born in Tweakard, but he lives in Leith and has worked variously in journalism, PR, wildlife conservation and the arts. His story, Tumshay McFadden's Bid for Ultimate Bliss, was a tartan short film which won a Scottish BAFTA in 2004. He's read at various festivals, has been an Arts Council resident at the very beautiful Cove Park in Argyll, and received a New Writers Award last year from Scottish Book Trust. He's a very brave man who volunteered to go first. Huge cheer for George Anderson.
Just because there's an afterlife doesn't necessarily mean there's a God, does it? Hello, my name's George Anderson. Hello, Dragons. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be reading a little bit tonight from my work called The Atheist Ghost. And the premise of this is that the atheist ghost finds himself dead. There's no sign of God or the other guy. He can't really remember much about who he is. And it's not so much that he remembers, but he has a set of stories, and they're all that he has to make sense of things. And the people in the stories, which are, I suppose, parables for a dead man, fables of a sort, some myths, some legend, are all set on a set of islands in the North Sea called the Bewilders. And the people in the stories are also trying to make sense of their own little worlds within the logic of those worlds. So I'm just going to read you a little bit now from a story from The Atheist Ghost. It's called The Keepers of the King's Toes. The king developed a mould between the toes of his left foot. A brown plaque of cracked fungal flesh and weeping tissue. On noticing this, the dressers offered ointment, but the king refused. He'd come to believe anything that happened to him must, by definition, be desirable and regal. "Behold, the royal encrustments, are they not magnificent?" he proclaimed. The dressers said no more on the matter for a week, while the foot developed a worsening odour, and the king began to wince and limp through their midst. "Would sire permit us to polish the royal toe ornaments?" said dresser one. "So they might look their best, Majesty." The king conceded, and from then on the dressers worked to strike a balance between totally curing the infection and letting it run away unchecked. They applied powders and ointments to discourage the growth, or dampened the toes if the crust was receding too much. They became experts at cultivating just the right fungal presence, and could often tell by smell alone whether the growth should be helped or hindered on any particular day. Responsibility for the 5 toes had to be divided 4 ways, so they argued about the status of each. "A pinky toe is small. It has less status," argued dresser one. "The big toe is the most important." "A pinky toe is dainty. It has special status. A big toe is coarser and of lesser status," said dresser 3. They quibbled over every permutation. A middle toe has a fungal hosting trough on each side of it, while the outside toes have only one groove. Dresser 4 argued that for this reason, the outside toes should count as a single responsibility. In the end, they took a toe each, with the big toe on a rota. But 2 was not content with his given territory, the pinky. One morning he drew his finger along the infected crease, planning to smear its spores onto the other foot. But as he made the first pass, the king giggled and gasped, "Oh, stop!" causing the flustered dresser to sock and shoe without completing his work. That day and night he nurtured the fingertip, keeping it warm, not even daring to sleep in case he flailed his hand across the sheets and dislodged the infection. The following morning he finally dipped the finger between the clean toes of the king's right foot, and within days there was a matching growth prospering on both feet, a new territory to be contested. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George. Over to the Dragons. Lucy, should we start at this end first?
Okay.
Literary agent view of that.
Firstly, I thought you read it amazingly well, I have to say. say your delivery is fantastic, and the title is great. It's not all... I mean, what I would like to ask is this a collection of stories under the term of the Atheist Ghost, because that's how you presented it. You said it's the Atheist Ghost, but we didn't hear anything about the Atheist Ghost in that extract.
The individual stories are all that the Atheist Ghost has in his consciousness.
Okay.
So he introduces himself at the beginning, and he appears along the way, and also in some of the stories as well himself.
So is that a way of kind of putting a collection of short stories together into a more cohesive novel, as it were?
Yeah, it would be something along the sort of Arabian Nights kind of idea, where there's a theme.
Because just from an agent's point of view, I quite like to call a spade or whatever, you know, if it's a collection of stories, I'd quite like it to be called a collection of short stories. And without the kind of artifice of trying to make it something else. Okay. If it's something else, then that's fine. Mm-hmm. As a short story, I thought it's very energetic, it's great, but it also made me think it might be more young adult than actually an adult collection. There was a fableness to it, although I have to admit I'm not that keen on...
There's some extreme rudeness in some of the other stories.
So Chaucer rather than Aesop's Tales.
Anna mentioned that somebody made a film from one of my stories, and it was actually one of this collection, and it's so filthy my mother refused to come to the premiere.
Okay, not young adult then.
Maybe not available for young adults then. Francis?
I thought you read it extremely well, George, and I enjoyed listening to it, but I had the same question. You know, is this for kids or adults?
Definitely not kids.
The other thought that occurred to me was this, you know, within this fable-like style is when you're referencing these traditional modes of storytelling, how are you able to express your own strong sense of personality onto a form that is very traditional, and I suppose you were subverting it with foot rot, and to me in this case it seemed a bit puerile, and I thought you could do more with that subversion. Equally, I liked the way you performed and read, and I like the way you put words together, and you obviously have a very good connection to language, and it reminded me of Alistair Gray and other writers in that respect. And I suppose what I was curious about was whether you know, in the book there was any sense of a kind of strong, sustained sense of character, of one character going through, and whether that's something that you can develop.
Well, the Atheist Ghost himself is finding out who he is, I suppose, as the stories progress. But I think of the stories, I suppose, in some ways like Damon Runyon's Guys and Dolls stories, where there's a cast of characters. So some people turn up in more than one story. The stories are sometimes mythological, sometimes up to date and very kind of realistic. Some of them are fantastical. So there's a mixture of them, but some people turn up more than once.
And is the Atheist Ghost in all of them?
He is only appearing in some of them, but the Atheist Ghost is the narrator, I suppose.
Can I cut to the chase, George? What is it actually about? I mean, what is the Atheist Ghost trying to tell us? Is there a sort of, I mean, I infer there's a kind of element of allegory.
I think the point I'm trying to make in most of the stories is that the way that people, the little rules and conventions that people invent in different societies to relate to each other are all fairly ridiculous, really, when you take them to their nth degree. So basically the people in each story are pushing the boundaries of the logic within their world until it just becomes farcical. So, you know, the same sort of logic that would make someone fly a plane into the Twin Towers, ultimately, is the same sort of logic that makes a whole government hang on the athlete's foot of a king.
I agree with my fellow dragons that you gave brilliant reading. It was an incredibly confident pitch, so well done for that. For me, you're talking about this creation of world, and I didn't quite get this sense of world. I got hints of it, and it felt like if you'd taken me a bit further, it would have been an interesting and enticing world, but it was a bit absent for me. And almost not quite weird enough in a curious way. You know, I wanted you to take it even weirder, I mean, even further down the nasty athlete's foot road. But well done.
Not something you hear every day from a pitch. Thank you very much, George. Thank you, Dragons.
Thank you, Dragons.
Thank you.